the ghouls, as you see, all 14 pieces. So now let's start up with first reading the normal entries. So it came through the wall. All I remembered is the roar, the open maw, the rank foulness of its breath, the lolling tongue, and the way two of my friends were crushed between it and our grain silo. The way it seemed to fall in love with tearing them apart over and over and over. Interviews in the field, Eidolon Plains, conducted by Sigor Sava. Now the augur. Its arms shoot forward, the driz ratcheting outward, passing in and out of Horvath's body like it was nothing. I can still hear the screech of the driz, the maddening chatter of its teeth. Horvath's screams. Again, interviews in the field of Eidolon Plains, conducted by Vigor Sava. Then the expired. It came at me, wailing like a lost thing screaming for help. Then it wrapped its clay-cold arms about me. And here I am, barely anything left of me now, lying in this bed, except a few stories, and the memory of its face, like a newborn child. Again, interviews from the field and the Richters. Kanzu gave us standing orders. Shoot the sawmen first. We'd seen what they had done to our brothers and sisters. That was not going to happen to us. Again, field. Now, the ghouls. Oh, there is the 0. I came to the Eidolon Plains not to explore horror, but to lay to rest an ancient mystery. It would seem horror had something to say regardless. The ghouls, grown in darkness beneath the feet of the enemy, born to fight, to kill, and to die. Truly, of all the places horror may call home, it is most comfortable within the imaginings of men. Sigurd Savar, morphologist and the antiquarian. Now the overwhelming numbers. The ghouls are designed to a simple philosophy, victory assured through overwhelming numbers and the element of surprise. Then sudden terror, the element of surprise, and cheaply bought. Ghouls are shock troops, fast grown in Diapor's bags, cultured from repurposed Grenier gene slurry. The key to victory is quantity over quality. A tide of claws and flesh to crush any enemy foolish enough to stand before it. Yeah, nearly hit the thing there. Dr. Tengus. By the way, Dr. Tengus is somehow Captain Vor. So let's keep it like that. While not of Vor's design, the general uses the ghouls to good effect. Credit for the development of these horrors goes to none other than Dr. Tengus, father of the infamously unstable Gunstring 3, developed in his laboratories against the wishes of Vor himself and with the funding of a certain ill-fated counselor. The ghouls are Tengu's crowning achievement. They have secured the Doctor's place in the good graces of the Grenier Queens. Oh yes, they hack. The person doesn't get enough killings, that he still has these things. So now strength in numbers. Ghouls are far from the finest of Grenier troops, but what they lack in martial skill, they make up for in sheer horrifying volume. Shock troops. Ghouls are deployed in advance of regular Grenier troops. Before then, those troops must keep the ghouls sated, lest they turn upon those who failed to feed them. Now, the Born to Die. Especially degenerate ghoul specimens are employed as suicide troops. Unstoppable. Ouch, that side. So unstoppable. They are incapable of fear, relentless. Yeah, those are... I'm just waiting for the moment when I accidentally hit the point for the secret entry. Massive casualties may be inflicted upon massed ranks of ghouls without slowing their advance. This is a new phase in the Grenier campaign for dominance in the Origin system, one that has increased the stakes for every sentient being who calls it home. Now, limit Now I have the worst thing in the world right below my screen. Give me a moment. Can I remove it? Let's see. Yeah, that did the trick. Sorry, because I got my taskbar below the window, and now I will mute myself while I find the fragmented pieces.
Every living thing longs to be whole. Every living thing yearns to defy death. If from death you returned, yet the part you loved best did not, what then? My name is Sigor Savar, morphology specialist with Nef Anyo's Venusian terraforming expedition. I was tasked with decoding the Orican gene record of what had once been a preserve, and reviving select specimens for study. This is an account of my encounter with lifeform VK7, a larger than average Kavat specimen possessed of atypical behavioral characteristics. Specimen VK7, unlike the others, did not come from a gene record. She was found, frozen, in a sealed closet close to the environmental control station. Her unassuming tomb for millennia. Here, then, was an intact example of Orican-era fauna. I was Corpus, a scientist second and a businessman first. VK7, an Orican strain Kavat of unusual size and patterning. Well, I could think of several members of the nobility who would pay a fortune for such a thing. Enough to buy a handsome slice of any planetoid of my choosing. I had the corpse laid on a dissection rack, ready for a full surgical examination. Then, like any animal dreaming, the paw twitched. I glanced at the vital scanner, expecting to see some anomalous electrical reaction taking place, contracting ancient muscles, but no. What I saw there was a beating heart. I did not revive specimen VK7. Before my eyes, she willed herself back to life. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Some speak of feeling a connection to something greater than themselves, to which I laughed, as any right-thinking corpus would. Life is profit, profit is life. But in that moment, watching that animal claw her way out of death's dark pit, though I did not admit it to myself, something in me was forever changed. I found her sharp gaze unsettling. The way she would watch my every move from her cage unnerved me. When a visitor came, I would watch VK7 studying their habits. In time, she came to anticipate regular arrivals, having memorized their schedules. On the morning of my 4th shift, I entered my laboratory to find her cage door open and VK7 gone. One consequence of breathing life back into a world is unintentionally resurrecting life forms and viruses one finds less desirable. The infestation is both of those things. Reports returned of some hive sites found destroyed, and then of a large beast found at others. An animal intelligent enough to learn and react to corpus behaviors and patterns. Some claimed it had learned to measure ammunition expenditure to better attack when a target was most vulnerable. Needless to say, almost none who attacked the beast survived. This had to be Specimen VK7. I left to join with a flamer team already deployed to a nearby hive. Both team and hive were dead when I arrived, killed by tooth and claw. Fearing for my life, I made to leave, and was apprehended by the sight of a low figure blocking my egress. Specimen VK7. She prowled forward from the shadow of a shattered, snow-blown hive, her paw prints red with blood. I made to open a comm channel to request assistance. VK7 growled low, and I swear this to be true, slowly shook her head. I did not make that call. She padded closer, and I saw the wound on her side. She turned that side toward me, an act of trust, and a request for aid. I unpacked my field kit and, carefully, went to work. I did not report my experience with Specimen VK7. I could not admit why then, but now I can tell you. I felt it would have violated a trust. There I was, a morphology specialist, sworn to the Corpus Empire, and yet, for reasons entirely illogical, I placed loyalty to a wild animal above my life oath, and every doctrine that values self-interest above charity. But keep that confidence I did. I think that is why VK7 brought me the hand. Somehow, she had managed to infiltrate the facility, bypass 2 different security gates, and had gained entry to my laboratory without raising an alarm, or my awareness. She held in her jaws a severed hand. Blackened, fossilized, gently, she laid it before me and, with a meaningful glance, turned, padded away into the shadows, and was gone. I analyzed the hand, what I learned that night, alone in my laboratory. would become an obsession to focus the remainder of my life. The hand was of Orokin construction, emphasis on that last word. Whoever the original possessor had been, they were born of no mother. In the past, I had been privileged to read some of Alad V's treatises on warframes, and there could be no mistake. What I held was the hand of one of those very creatures, and one Aniocorp had no record of. Therefore, my first task was to extract a working blueprint, or as near as possible, from the sample's cellular makeup. One word recurred again and again. The word that had once been her name. Cora. Cora. I was convinced. Specimen VK7 wanted Cora resurrected. Why else bring the hand to me? Why trust me with this sole remaining piece of a lost Orokin warrior? The evidence of such rich, nuanced cognition on the part of an animal. That was the real treasure here. The value of which, I knew, would be lost on my superiors. VK7 would be hunted down and, at best, captured for testing. At worst, well. Therefore, I told them none of this. To no avail. Specimen VK7 was tracked to a box canyon 4.3 clicks south-southwest of the atmosphere processing station. The horror of the hives, as she had come to be known, had been deemed unworthy of study, and was to be destroyed in her lair. I positioned myself at the entrance to her cave home and waited. To doom myself in the name of some imagined ideal. My own voice screamed in my head. What are you doing? What are you doing? Once, not so long before, I was a man who would have sold this animal for profit. Now I stood in the freezing cold, surrendering all I had for, some would say nothing. I would say, something greater than myself. They came, picking their way through the snow, heads bowed, pushing against a numbing, slashing wind that froze skin and carried my voice to them. I begged them to stop, pleading VK7's case, with a bomb in my hand. It went about as well as you'd expect. They did not listen. Numsol is employed, traditionally, as an animal tranquilizer, but converts to an aerosol easily enough. The canister rolled from my fingers and erupted in a geyser of brown-green gas, thrown towards the hunters by that roaring wind, bathing them. I am a better scientist than saboteur. Their respirators dealt with the Numsol as handily as every other contaminant, and I was promptly arrested. But VK7 did escape. I achieved that much. The atmosphere processor wasn't made for imprisonment or interrogations, but the lack of facilities did not prevent them performing both. Bound and beaten in maintenance closet A5, I told them everything. It doomed me. Zil, the oxygen tech from Reclamation 3, had a previous career in psychological operations for some branch of the military. Therefore, he had been selected to administer to me, to interview me and, ultimately, to execute me. Barrel pressed to my forehead, Zil said he would prefer it if I did not look at him. Obliging as ever, I closed my eyes. There was a sharp crack, then nothing more. I opened my eyes. Zil lay dead at my feet, limp, throat clasped in VK7's jaws. I was corpus no longer. Remaining on Venus would be death for both of us. We had to escape. Together we made for an automated cargo relay, one that would ferry us anonymously to the hold of a Solaris rail tractor in geosynchronous orbit and away from Venus. How well she guided me, circumnavigating patrols and security cameras. But, inevitably, my former comrades calculated our likely destination and closed in rapidly. Plasma blasts lanced the air from both sides of the hangar. I bundled myself into the nearest open conveyor, bound for orbit. A waste of time, I knew. We had reached our means of escape, but had no hope of achieving it. Troopers and mowers closed in a classic pincer movement. Sparks and near misses flashed hot against my face. In moments, our conveyance would be destroyed, and us along with it. And my only thought was heartbreak for how badly I had failed her. In that final moment, VK7 did something that will stay with me for the rest of my days. With one of her meaningful glances, the last we would ever share, she reared up and activated the conveyor. My pod's door slammed shut, and outside my viewport, she leapt toward the enemy. Before I could slap the release and free myself, the mag rails activated, and I was hauled out of the complex, skyward, and into orbit. Saved, leaving her behind. That was, well, many years ago now. I have spent my life attempting to locate Cora's remains. Contacts informed me she was found, fused but intact, within the Orican terraforming complex itself, and shipped off-world via a notorious Solaris rail agent, who subsequently vanished. I now believe, firmly, that her remains are to be found on the Eidolon Plains. I go there now, entrusting these encrypted logs to my old friend, Konzu, for safekeeping. There I shall put a lifetime of searching to rest. I have never doubted that VK7 survived Venus. And to this day, I still believe that before I leave this life forever, I shall one day look up from my writings to find a familiar figure standing in my doorway, alongside her Kavat. I am Siegel Savar, a better man, as it turns out, than a scientist.
Okay, that was deep.